Hi, everyone, and welcome to the EV Fleet Roadmap, a Navistar podcast on your fleet's path to zero emissions. I'm your host, Jason Morgan, and joining me today is Joe Jenkins, Zero Emissions Customer Onboarding Manager for Navistar. Joe, thanks for taking the time. Great to talk with you.
Nice to be here.
So when these EVs get out on the road, you're the guy making it happen, right? You're going to customers, you're talking with them, you're making sure that they are going to be successful in their EV journey.
Yeah. Our mission is to make them comfortable with the vehicle at the end of the day. And so the transition into EV can be, a little daunting or scary for a lot of customers. So that's what we do.
Yeah, exciting though as well, because I've been in some of these EVs, right? They're exciting vehicles, they're fun to operate, right? But there's a difference. There's a big difference coming from the diesel world. What are some of those things, those differences that fleets or customers need to be aware of when moving from diesel to electric vehicles?
I'd say the key one is probably going to be the range that the vehicle can operate in. We call it range anxiety in the industry. Yep. But what we understand, though, is that most fleets have a place for an EV in their operations, and we have to help them find where that vehicle fits. Yeah. And so range anxiety can be battled by just planning on how you're going to use it in your fleet in the first place.
Right. Well, and the anxiety part, right? It's all, people build it up. You hear about range anxiety and you read about it, the headlines, and then you think, oh, I don't know how this will work for mine. But as you point out, you work with the customer, make sure the vehicle is still meeting the application demand in that application. What's important in terms of either operation or just kind of the workflow for when the vehicle's on the site, right? It rolls into the site, you hopefully have charging on the site at that point, right? You need that before the vehicle shows up, because if you got the vehicle showing up, that's not going to help you if you don't have charging. What are some of those operational differences that you have to work with people on?
Basically around the charging is the strategy on when and where to charge, I think is the biggest leader into success. Planning on where you're going to have your chargers at, depending on your fleet usage. Some customers may have a single point for charging where the vehicle only comes back to that place every day. And then we have, maybe on the truck side with customers, they may want to charge at their deliveries as well. So all of that is part of the strategy to success for an EV, zero emissions vehicle.
I know you're going to a lot of customer events where they're taking delivery of the vehicles, right? And you're there working with them to make sure that the driver's successful, fleet manager's successful. What kind of training goes into this, right? It's something that we haven't talked a lot about in this space of what training do you provide people to make sure they're successful?
So the training that we provide centers around the driver first, and making the driver comfortable with something that's a little different to them, and efficiently using the vehicle to get out of it what they should. So a lot of that comes around efficient driving by using regenerative braking. Our vehicles have 3 different levels of this, so we coach them to use the strongest that they're comfortable with. And then also, they have a lot of questions about my pre-trip. What's that look like? What are the things that I'm looking for? They're asking about safety items. What if I'm in an accident? What do I do? So that training is centered around the driver first. And then from there, we also speak with the fleet management folks. And, a lot of the same topics, high volt safety, what do I do if the vehicle's compromised, all the way down to how do I manage this vehicle in my fleet. So we give them guidance around using on-command connection or, their OEM's telematics. And that's a big helper to running a zero emissions vehicle, because now we get a lot more data on efficiency, and we can compare one vehicle to the next and know where can we do better.
Right. Well, let me back up a little bit. I do want to dig into this because the pre-trip, I think this is the first time that I've even heard that of, oh yeah, there's probably some differences there. I mean, every driver is familiar with secure, not cracked, broken, leaking kind of pre-trip inspection. Do you have examples of some of those biggest differences on an EV compared to a diesel?
Well, the biggest difference is there's a lot less fluids to worry about. But with EVs, the cooling systems are pretty critical to overall performance and the health of the vehicle. So we have to highlight places where there could be coolant leaks that they're not used to finding them. From the front of the vehicle all the way to the back, we could have cooling leaks. So that's a big point on the pre-trip inspection. There's also the conversation around high volt safety and don't touch orange, or how do I turn this thing off safely? So, so pre-trip, that's where we get the opportunity to show them where these high voltage safety areas are and coach them around how do I inspect the vehicle without compromising myself or it.
Right. No, I mean, yeah, it's a great point because every day drivers are cracking open the hoods. They're checking the oil. They're checking the coolant. You're looking for your lines. You see your air lines there. Okay, that's all great. Moving toward, opening the hood of an electric truck and seeing different cables, right? Even going from even sometimes engine manufacturer to engine manufacturer to engine manufacturer in the diesel world is a little, you got to take a moment to really make sure you know what you're looking at. Absolutely. But in that EV world, understanding, which are the electric cables. I like that example of the coolant going all the way through, right? I got to follow that line all the way through the drive line now, not just stopping here in the engine compartment.
So for drivers, they want to know where can all these leaks be,
right?
And that's just one part of a PDI or a pre-trip.
Yep.
But it's a core for them for what do I look for in my walk around.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And then there are still the commonalities that they understand: the brakes, the wheels, the tires,
Absolutely.
all that good
stuff.
stuff.
So for us, the brakes and the suspension are a carryover from a diesel product, so it helps simplify. Pre-trip on that aspect.
Right.
But what we don't have is engine oil leaks or exhaust leaks or any kind of after treatment components that may be aging. Those kind of things that we don't have to do in the EV space.
Right. Yeah. Very cool. One more thing I want to follow up to on the efficient driving. Now, efficiency obviously is the name of the game in our world, in the commercial world anyway. But you mentioned the regenerative braking. The different levels, and that you want them to use, you got 1, 2, 3, I assume 3 being the most, what do you say, aggressive braking or
I would say
reactive?
The most aggressive.
Yeah. All right.
The driver gets the most feedback in that setting,
Okay.
and it gets the maximum amount of energy back to the system.
Right, and so that's that kind of one pedal driving. When you take your foot off the accelerator, then you start slowing down at a pretty good clip.
Correct, and it is generally referred to as one pedal driving in most applications. We tend to not call it that because it doesn't take the driver to a complete stop in our application.
Okay. Well, and that's an important, going back to the training and understanding the equipment, right? I've seen various levels of that. Some EVs will go down to a full stop, some EVs won't go down to a full stop, and you're not really sure sometimes until you get into the vehicle of how far down this regen will go. Some will stop at 5 miles per hour and still let you crawl up. And it takes a little while, in my experience of being behind those wheels too. I always stop like a car length before I expect to.
We do see that a lot. And that's a focal point of training for the drivers when they finally get behind the wheel.
Right.
What is regen?
Right.
You know? And we explain it in a way that maybe is more familiar to them, and we compare it to engine braking or what some people would call Jake brake.
Right.
It feels like Jake brake,
Right.
but it's more intense.
Yeah. Right.
Where it's better is that the driver has the ability to feather that intensity with throttle position, and that's part of the learning process.
Yeah.
Some of them are a little more aggressive on the throttle pedal than others, and they learn to drive it better just to make it smoother.
Right.
So it has an effect of making them a more efficient driver right out of the gate.
Yeah, it's there. I mean, in the diesel world, you put that accelerator down to the floor to, get through your first couple gears because you need those engines RPMs up, and then you can work on it. This one, you got instant torque right away, and it takes off on you. They're fun, but different for sure. Post delivery, then, so you've delivered it, you've done the training. Any other training or guidance, or how do you help customers continue that success then?
Well, what we like to do with them is review efficiency data over time. Typically, we have what we call a 45-day review with the customer, and we will pull an efficiency report by basically charge sessions and how many miles they're going in between.
Oh, interesting.
We can do this by temperature even,
Yeah.
and we can show the customer the vehicle's efficiency from cold weather to warm weather or from one driver to the next. And it helps them along the path of maybe retraining their drivers so that everybody's getting the same efficiency out of their bus or their truck.
Right. Because again, going back to it, efficiency now relates to range, and then you have an expected range, and then you get that inherent range anxiety just because it's new, right? So you want to make sure you're hitting that expectation. Absolutely. Driver still has a big portion of that. So once you have the vehicles at the customers, you've got them all trained up, they're ready to roll. What does that successful rollout look like? When you're working with a customer, what do you want to see happen?
I would say a successful customer onboarding would consist of the OEM and the end user taking advantage of the consulting phase. This is where a lot of lessons learned can be employed onto a new customer, and we can help them not make the mistakes that others have made. But ultimately, charging is in place, has been commissioned, tested. Primarily with our vehicle would be wonderful. It does happen that way sometimes. And also the end user has been trained on how to properly use the vehicle, how to maintain it, any safety items that they may have in question. For us, a customer onboarding is successful when we can hit all those points and the vehicle can be used the same day that we deliver it.
Right, very cool. That's all well and good, but we know that things happen. Applications are different, customers are different. There are challenges still every day. That's kind of the name of the game, right? Do you have any standout examples of maybe lessons you've learned doing these rollouts and these customer onboardings of cautionary tales maybe?
Yes, I would say we've had a couple of pain points along the way, primarily earlier in our strategy. But we have had learnings from past customer interactions where perhaps the consulting phase was not offered or not taken advantage of. And so the customer made poor decisions on what charging equipment to purchase or where to put it or how do I integrate this vehicle into my fleet and make it work. So typically the lessons learned are around advising the customer before they even receive the vehicle.
Right. So, and we've talked on this podcast. We talked a lot about that too. That front end kind of conversation and planning, and how the ability to start now isn't just buying the trucks. It's just having the conversation. It's not even a sales conversation. It's just like a planning conversation, right?
That's right. It's definitely not from a sales point of view. It's at Navistar, we like to make sure that the vehicle is going to fit their use case before we pursue even selling it to them. So it's, what we want is every one of our customers to have success with the zero emissions.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a new segment, new product, new kind of category there for people to understand and work with customers. And, fleets like to shop around, work with a lot of different OEMs and suppliers, but to look for that kind of consultation approach is big. How does the dealer play into that? Fleets have the relationship with the dealer. How does that work in the zero emission space now?
For us, the dealers are our partners. They're typically the first and the last contact for them, and they're also our biggest ally in keeping the vehicles maintained and on the road. So for Navistar, it's a huge piece of the puzzle, and going forward, it's getting even bigger. Right now, we have 50 of our servicing dealers that are certified for EV, with another 70 in the process of becoming certified.
Oh, wow.
So we have the largest servicing footprint in North America for the EV product.
What goes into that certification, or what does the dealer have to understand to be able to provide that service to their customers?
So the dealer needs what we call preferred tool list. Also, they have to have at least 2 of their technicians certified. They have to have safety equipment and PPE, and they also have to have a approved style of lift for the EV vehicle.
Interesting.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that the dealer has to do to get on board, and we're seeing a lot of adoption.
So and just to clarify, the technician training, the PPE is personal protective equipment, I believe, right?
Personal protective.
But I guess I didn't realize that it comes down to lift selection too. I can't just put the truck on a typical lift. This is a big equipment changeover then now. Can you kind of explain that a little bit of why that is?
What we recommend is a wheel style lift. Typically they're portable. You can move them around your shop. The other thing that we recommend is a dedicated workspace in your shop to where you can keep high voltage work away from other technicians that aren't trained. But as far as lifting goes, we've learned that the wheel lift works the best for avoiding any kind of damage to the vehicle.
Right. I've heard about the dedicated bay to zero emission or to electric vehicle work. In your expertise, can I only do EV work there, or is that just the bay where if an EV does come in, it rolls in there, and can I still service diesel there too?
Correct. Yeah, what we see the dealers doing is they're saying this is our EV workspace when we have one. And all the PPE and the required tools are in that area. So when an EV comes in, they can triage and do what they need to do.
So then when I get the like the EMV, right? It rolls in. I'm gonna get a couple of those. Is the servicing side completely handled by the dealer network? If I run my own PMs, are you training me as the fleet? Where should my expectation be on how much I'm touching the vehicle in a service capacity?
For basic PMs, the end user can do these. Coolant changes, power steering fluid. We still have hydraulic power steering. There's an air filter for the air compressor. Okay. There are things that the end user can do themselves, but when it comes down to high voltage equipment repairs, this is still something that we would like for the dealers to handle. Right. High voltage trained technicians.
Right. Yeah, those early days, just kind of getting comfortable with it. Again, it goes back to that partnership between you and the customer and the fleet then too. Of still a lot to learn here in the space and still a lot to just kind of work through. The challenges are going to happen, but I think what I've learned in talking with you and throughout the podcast is just having a partner, right?
Absolutely.
That I can work through it on, and that I'm not alone in it, and we do this right. So how would someone get a hold of you or get involved with the Navistar team on the EV side?
I would say your first contact is going to be at your local dealer. Okay. Find out if they are EV compliant or if they're on the path to. Okay. And then they're going to be able to guide you towards consulting around charging and just how to get the EV into your fleet. Okay. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to consult with me on all things EV. Had a great time. Thanks for being here. Thank you. And thank you for watching the EV Fleet Roadmap, a Navistar podcast about your fleet's path towards zero emissions. I'm Jason Morgan, and we'll see you next time.